Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the March 28th Affordable Housing Plan Advisory Committee meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. If we could all stand for the pledge, please, of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'll do a roll call. Amy Balco. I don't see her. Chris Capola. Robert Dombrowski. I don't see him either. Ann Gamlin.
Here.
George Millard here. Tracy Shipman. I don't see her either. Tracy Sisti.
Here.
Okay. So I guess Jim Mahoney had sent out an update to the Affordable Housing Plan after our joint meeting with the Plan of Conservation and Development Group. I guess we were going to go over that tonight, Jim.
Yes,
Jennifer's not here
we
yet.
sent-
Were you going to lead that discussion or?
I can lead it. I guess we sent out both versions, the one as revised and then with revisions. I know there might be hard to follow those revisions sometimes, but maybe it makes it easier to not have to review all the sections all the time. So we sent them out both ways, but yeah, I mean, I think in general that we made good progress last time. I think we're, pretty much there. And so I guess the question is whether anybody on the committee has comments, additional corrections, or, whether we're good with the draft as you see it to send it to the council.
Could be a short meeting tonight. Ann, did you have anything or?
Basically, I just wanted to say that I wanted to thank the people on the committee for putting up with me. I realize I have a pretty steep learning curve. And I appreciated that you listened to my thoughts. I thought most of the things that you worked on for the seniors were good. We're not going to get everything to be perfect. So, I think we have to take our gains where we can and try to keep working on making people at the housing authority clear on what the seniors do want.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they listen to us as much as they should. That's not on this.
Yeah, I think that to that degree too, we've got to try to maybe help them along a little bit by offering up or trying to find, as we put in here, alternative ways of finding funding and or other agencies potentially that could help in that endeavor. So hopefully the things that we put in that regard will be accepted. Tracy, did you have any comments or?
No, not really. I'm going through it for a third time right now, just making sure. I do like the revised better.
Okay. Chris, anything?
I think my concerns are more listening to some of the,
Can you put mic on?
I think my concerns are.
Can I bring the thing in closer to?
Sorry. Listening to the people that have presented in the past and the concern, because for me, something that's important is finding elderly affordable housing.
Mhm.
And hearing from the housing authority and from the guy from Metro stating that there are no incentives for elderly housing, but there are for low income affordable housing. That frustrates me. Because, my parents are elderly and I want to keep them at the town that they're in because they know it like the back of their hand. I would be all for trying to find ways to get creative. I just don't know. Maybe Jim or somebody knows ways that we can do it, but it seems like it's an uphill battle trying to help the seniors.
I agree. So I think to that end, we added a few things in here with regard to the strategy that could help that matter. it's a matter of trying to impress upon, I guess, the town council, when everything is said and done and the affordable housing plan is actually cast in concrete, that it can't be shelfware. There's action. There has to be, I think one of our recommendations was to put together some ongoing committee to try to marshal some of these things in. I think a lot of it has to do with trying to get to some of the legislators and so forth. Arosh, did you want to make any comments? You've been an active part of this also. We'd really like your input if you have anything you'd like to add.
Nothing at this point. I think it's going in the right direction. I think the same struggle that we have had looking at the history of the Berlin Housing Authority. We're trying to get this project going for almost 10 years. And it's moved further along this time than in previous occasions. But what we hear is that if if it's age restricted, we are going to have less opportunities for funding. The housing authority is trying to work around that so that you're not really saying that age restricted, but it has to do with the amount of funds that are available in terms of tax credits and other types of loans that is not available when you restrict it to age. So I think we're all saying the same thing.
Right.
We might be able to get some affordable housing, call it affordable housing, but if there's a way that you can market it and promote it to seniors, we might have a better chance of, getting seniors the housing that they need.
I think it would be important if we, there was that one aspect of putting universal design into the buildings, or at least some percentage of it too, that even though it may not be on the affordable side, at least it's on the sort of like ADA compliant side that it might be enticing to some of the seniors that are a little better off, I guess, from a financial perspective, so that they also have, places to go too. I mean, that's probably my wife and I's biggest concern as we get older and older. The house we're in is not really conducive to, wheelchair or bathtub access or shower access with a wheelchair. And hopefully we don't get there, but we've seen so many other people that has been the case, and it's a real barrier. So, and
that was one of the things that I also thought about. And I think you're going to find right now, you've got people retiring that are looking to get out of their homes. They're probably about 15, unless they decided they were moving out of town ahead. They're probably about 15 or 20 years older than they were when they retired. Those are the ones that really need the lower affordable housing, because their Social Security was lower when they started taking it. And they're starting to feel the crunch now because their funds are running out. Who knows however they had them invested, they're starting to run low on funds. So they want to look for a place that's reasonable they can afford to move into. But your seniors that are retiring now, they're probably going to be they might be in their homes for another 10 or 15 years, unless they want to move out of town. And when they do move out, they're in a better financial position because the funds that they had were more, they're working on a higher income base than the ones that retired 20 years ago.
I agree. Okay, Jim, I just had a couple minor comments, nothing a big deal.
Okay.
One of the things is we talk in terms of what is affordable housing, and I know it's in a chart here, but we point out the extremely low income, the very low income, and the low income, but really the only place it's referenced or sort of defined is in one of the charts that's out there on page 2. Minimally, I'd like to maybe see what those definitions in the glossary or the term, whatever we're calling it. What are we calling it?
Yeah, I think we're calling it glossary. Sounds familiar.
Yeah, glossary of terms. And the only other comment I really had was, I was just wondering whether we should move that glossary of terms to be the last section in the main body versus in the appendix. I don't know how many people will look at the appendix. That's my concern, but I think the glossary of terms is kind of helpful. Those are my only two comments.
I mean, we can easily do those if the committee, committee wants to make those changes, that's fine.
Anybody have any concerns or issues with that? The minor changes. Jennifer is here. There's not a lot. Why don't you have a seat and
Once we've been able to sneak in.
While we're
Yeah.
waiting for Jennifer to get set up, I could mention just a few of the, and I'm sure you saw them, but a few of the things we added. One was the table with the 2021 affordable housing appeals list numbers. Another was the information on the length of the deed restrictions for the different projects. And then the projects by status, whether they're completed, approved, under construction. Because a lot of, we had tables, but they didn't really match up to the numbers we were referencing in the report. So I think when that project by status table, really matches up better because it shows what we've actually completed and shows how, there's market rate units at affordable houses and affordable projects that count and that sort of thing. So if somebody really wants to cross-reference things, this makes it much easier. So just a few things that we did change from the last version.
so Jennifer, Jim was just kind of walked through, see if anybody had any comments or concerns or whatever. For the people that are here, essentially no, it would be the answer to that, very, very minor. So unless you had something,
No, I have gone through the draft a couple of times. Before we send it out, I'll go through it a couple of times more. I mean, what I'm looking for is if there's instances where I think, there could be some clarifying language. As Jim indicated, there has been some graphic added
yeah,
to it to, give some additional information that gives a fuller picture, essentially. I think that the draft is in terrific shape. And, we'll give another once over of it, Jim and I, and then we'll get it out to the council. So that way they have an opportunity to review it before it's presented.
okay,
Because obviously we want them to be able to review the content, ask any questions that they have at next week's meeting. We don't want them to notice the public hearing without having had the opportunity to review it. So, we will seek to, Jim, I think, distribute it tomorrow, given that it appears that the committee doesn't have any particular concerns about any of the content. But do you have any questions at this point about, what I worry sometimes about is people are hesitant to ask questions when we're this far along in the process. But much of this is new to all of you. So I don't want you to feel like you can't ask us a question about even the most minor thing in terms of the content. Is there anything about it that you don't understand? I know that you've had a number of meetings. You've been engaged a couple of times with planning and zoning and they're very well versed on the zoning aspect. And I would think that some of the information that you learned from that exchange may have been somewhat new to you as well. So I just, I want to make sure that there's not anything that anybody's hesitant to ask about.
I think my only concern is in how the town council receives it. And by that, not that they don't read it and understand what's in here, but they really get a flavor for that this is not about the 10% number. there really is a critical need in town. You know, by the way, I think there's a overarching agreement here that says in the seniors, if we had to say, what's our number one priority in the next 5 years of a problem that needs to be solved, it would be the seniors. And, you know, I hope they can discern that from here, but maybe it's got to be said point blank in the presentation too, that's at least I'm speaking for myself. I hope you guys are in agreement. If you're not, please speak up. But I'm not sure that it comes out very, very strongly that, you know, if it's a 5-year plan, we can't be all things to everybody, but there is an acute senior need right now. And the survey shows that if we didn't really break the survey down. I was actually going to ask this at one point in time. I'm not sure it's necessary, but you know, when we looked at it, it seemed to be needs were identified on both ends of the spectrum. By that, I mean, from an age group perspective, the middle was kind of okay. Yes, there's issues and whatever, but the greatest demands were at new families starting out and they can't afford a house, or there's just, you know, as it was pointed out in here, there's no inventory for them to buy. And what inventory there is getting sucked up by people that have more means than they need to buy that level of house. They're just not buying the next level of house because those aren't existing in town type of deal. So they're kind of there. But the seniors, it's, you know, it's sort of, as Ann was alluding to just before you came in, it's a two-pronged issue here. One is that there's seniors that just don't have a lot of income. They're now retired for 15, 20 years. They're living on predominantly Social Security. If they have pensions, they're probably very, very small. I can tell you, my mother's 93 years old. Her pension compared to mine is a fraction of mine. And I'm fortunate I have a pension. A lot of people don't even have a pension anymore. Hopefully they can save 401ks or 401(b)s and whatever. But I know her, she worked all her life and she put into the pension plan, and she actually worked for the state too. But you know, it's a fraction of what mine is. So with her and her Social Security, she's okay, but she's on that ragged edge. If she didn't have that pension plan, she'd be in, just as Ann was saying, she'd be barely surviving. So she's in her house today and you know, basically just has to pay her taxes and her heat. If she had to get out of there because it's overwhelming now and move to a smaller place, if she's got to go into affordable market rate places, it would be very difficult for her. So that's, you know, one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is there is a class of people out there in the seniors, whatever, who do have a house, who could free up that house to the new families from a CHFA perspective. There's an issue in the marketplace. We're not going to solve that, but they have nowhere to go. That house doesn't exist in town that's at a reasonable. For me to move out of my house and move into any of the senior purchased housing in town, I got to spend $150,000 more than my house is worth. You know, these are the Silver Ridges and the Berkeley, whatever, and the houses are not affordable. You know, I mean, if you got a good pension and good income, yeah, they are. But a lot of times for people like me, we would actually be moving up to a better grade house in a bigger house, maybe all on one floor, but they're in excess of 2,000 square feet and they're $400,000 to $450,000, you know, if they're even around. I'm not sure that to me is the crux of where we are right now in this next 5-year plan and trying to get that across to the town council. I'll be quiet now.
I think those points are well taken. Certainly, George, I think that can be conveyed in the presentation, the emphasis of that. We could certainly, you know, point out because you set priorities and it is, you know, their priorities for the next 5 years. And, you know, this is not, I mean, in all the committees that I'm advising at this point, they're finding the same thing.
Right.
You know, there is a real need among seniors. They're challenged by whether or not it is truly affordable at 80%. And so you made a priority to do 50% or lower, right, of AMI. So that's an important point. And then also just the diversity of stock is just not there. There's not availability. to begin with because the market conditions, but there's not that diversity that's really needed in the marketplace. So, I was in a meeting in North Haven last week. They've got five, between the housing authorities list and the HUD list, there's over 500 people on the two lists combined that are seniors who are looking for housing.
Wow.
In that area. So, I will convey it. We'll have the minutes done before we go into the council. We can share your statement with them. Are there any other comments that you'd like to make to the council about the plan?
My question, I just want to have it clarified to me. 50% that we're doing, is that for all housing or just push to seniors?
So, that's
'Cause
something.
I'm trying to figure out what door that opens up.
Yeah, so that's something that is going to be explored. And that's much of what the content of your plan is that, ultimately, as we look at the strategies. So, you have your clear priorities with your goals, right? We're, most of the strategies, most of the action steps, you're considering, you're evaluating, you're exploring, right? What's needed. So we're not gonna say that at this point in time, that it's going to be only directed towards seniors, because I think that we have to see how it plays out in the marketplace too, in terms of the actual construction of the projects. We've talked about this at length. There's market conditions that the town certainly has no control over, and probably many of the developers feel like they don't have much control over these days either.
Yeah, I think, it's two-pronged. Obviously, I think that's a special emphasis that we have to put in whatever group comes together at the end, and a lot of effort go in there. We still want to continue along the lines. There still is some need or a need for even 80% for like people just starting out working, whatever, again, it's 80%, but based on household size too. So you're not making $80,000 if you're one person. The limit is more like $50,000 or whatever. So there's a need for that too. If you looked at the Hartford Current over the weekend, they were talking about how I think rentals are up something like 11% in the state in moving northward type of deal. It's getting really crazy. And there's another phenomenon that's going on too, is that investors are buying up rental properties, flipping them over as high-end luxury rentals and not selling them. And taking a lot of apartments off the marketplace in terms of affordables and making them out of reach and turning them into luxury type of. Even some of what we're doing, if you look at the Steel building, it's like that's 76 market rate, high-end luxury apartments. It's nice to have that in town for people who can afford it, but it's really not going to help the cause. Really, it'll help the higher end. Maybe they'll move out of their one bedroom, $1,200 units and free it up for somebody else. But so it's a trickle down too a little bit.
We don't get a lot on EDC when somebody comes in to do a development and we ask them to put in 10% or so affordable. That never seems to be the problem. Where we run into the issue is when we ask if there's a senior project or something like that. And then it always comes back that there's not a lot of incentive for it.
Well,
And
Joe,
here's 5 years from now, we're going to be in the same boat because
we will.
the Social Security issue, all those things is woeful mismanagement. Doing what I do as a wealth manager, you would fire me if I got you 2% a year for the last 60 years. And that's what Social Security has done. So I've always been a proponent of privatizing it, and then those people's Social Security benefits would be 3 to 4 times that amount, and we'd have better financials. Now, obviously, maybe the market would increase its prices because people have. But but I think that this issue isn't as much as, I think that for us, the seniors, if we need to put something in there that maybe specifically says that the town of Berlin is really gonna actively try to find a way to help the seniors. That may be-
Well, there's stuff in there about moving, looking for other alternatives in regard to not just the housing authority, but which would take a change in what our zoning is and so forth, to allow both.
Letting the council know that, you know, make
Yes,
sure that they
yes.
understand that coming from this.
And
Their experiences as well, the senior market is where this real need is,
right,
so that they understand that.
and it's lobbying both state and federal legislators that, right, because it's, when we talked to Joe Bajorski and we talked to the guy from Metro, I mean, the whole big deal there is without funding from the state or the feds, it's not gonna happen. They cannot make it economical. So it has to happen. That's what has to be found, targeting this group, so. Tracy, anything you'd like to add?
No, I'm in agreement with everything you guys are saying. You know, I being in situations and seeing my family as well. I do agree with the number one priority being the older retired, like, you know, 10 years out of retirement and stuff like that, and finding stuff for them. That I know that was said earlier, but I actually am right on board with all of you guys and ladies.
Thank you. So
Okay.
we'll wrap this up then, and you're gonna get it to him soon, but the meeting's on the 5th.
The meeting is on.
Yes.
Are you getting a fair chunk of time on their agenda, or?
Well, that's what I was gonna say. I think Arosh and I had discussed it, and, you know, obviously there's a lot of other things going on, budget season and all that business, but I think, you know, we're thinking like 20 minutes to a half an hour. I mean, again, I think you have to think about you know, what what the attention span is going to be at what point in the meeting. But I think, you know, that's a fair amount of time. So as long as we concentrate our efforts, and they've heard this, you know, before a few times already. And the other thing I was going to say as we were speaking tonight was that I think, you know, George, if you were available, it would be good to have you, you know, like introduce the, you know, the report, and then we can just reinforce the things you're saying, because I think, you know, that you have certainly thought about this a lot, and you know, can kind of convey the priorities that the committee has in an effective way. So if you're willing and able, I would suggest that.
I'm willing and able. Okay. So we'll close this agenda item off then.
Yes.
Okay.
So is it just by consensus vote? Is everybody satisfied with the content? I just want to confirm. Committee member Capola, you're satisfied with the content and referring the draft?
I am. And Tracy,
Yeah.
okay. And those are missing, they're missing. Okay, thank you.
I did, just for the record, I did speak to Amy earlier.
Okay,
She did have a work conflict, and I will call the other members just to confirm their review of it and see if there's anything that they noticed that needed to be changed. Because look, there could be many eyes, and always there's.
yeah, I mean,
typo.
yeah, my guess is that would be what it is, or minor issues. I think we were somewhat, pretty much in agreement at the end,
Yes.
not necessarily with the P O C D, but. anyways. Okay, thank you. I don't see anybody here. The next item agenda was public comment, so don't think we have any. I do have two other action items. One is to review the minutes from the March 14th, 2022 special meeting. So these were sent out with the agenda and meeting notice for today. If I could have a motion to approve. Someone,
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
okay, second,
Chris can't.
I wasn't here.
you weren't here.
Tracy, can you second that?
Sure. Second.
She wasn't here either.
I wasn't here. That's right. I can't. I did
I
read
can,
them.
is that all right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll second it. Just me and you, we both in favor, Ann?
Yes.
Aye. Okay, that's it for the minutes. We, I had asked Kate later, we also have the minutes for the joint meeting. Is that, how do we want to handle that? I mean, they're not here. Want us to vote on it?
Yes, that's fine for you to vote on it.
Okay, who do we have here? So again, it would be Chris, myself, and Ann. So we have would like to vote on accepting the minutes for the March 21st, at least from the um, Plan Advisory Committee, the meeting minutes for March 21st. I have a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve those.
Second, any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay. Excellent. Thank you, everyone, for coming and putting the time you put into this effort. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion to adjourn.
Chris, second.
Oh. I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, everybody. So are we not in need of the 31st meeting then?
You are not in need of the meeting on the 31st.
Okay.
And just wait 1 second. We do anticipate, I just want to add at the end of this meeting, we do anticipate that the public hearing before the town council is going to be noticed for May the 17th, prior to the town council meeting. That's what we're anticipating at this point. But again, just for clarification on the process, the draft is going to the town council. It will be presented at their next meeting, which is next Tuesday, April the 5th. And we do anticipate at that time that they are going to have reviewed the draft, and they will notice again that public hearing for May the 17th. So if anybody who's interested, please do attend that public hearing.
So,
And the town clerk's office will have a draft that will be indicated in the public hearing notice. Public hearing notice, the time has yet to be decided on the public hearing. But we do again anticipate it will occur prior to the commencement of the regular.
so it needs to be posted by,
Earlier.
so it has to be posted by like the 12th. Is that correct?
35 days prior to the meeting.
So if the meeting's on the 17th,
It needs to be posted in Kate's office is what the statute says specifically.
well, we need 35 days, right? So we took March 15th to the 31st, right? That's 16 days, another 17. So it's got to back up from there. So like the 12th, 13th. So I'm just kind of working back. If the council has some significant issues we got to deal with, then we need to hop on that pretty quickly if you need us. Okay. Okay. That's all I was trying to get at. All right. Thank you, everyone.